everyone, welcome back. This is Venom, and we are going to talk about the Glaive issue in Destiny 2 today. So this is going to be kind of a different video. I'm going to just talk about some random topics every once in a while that I am kind of interested in. And I was actually working on my sword build today. I, as you can see, have a sword build for my hunter. Just messing around with some mods for it. And I once again found myself longingly looking at a list of glaives. And you can see I've got some glaives here that are class specific, but I wanted to bring them over so I could kind of go over some things for this video. And I once again found myself thinking about glaives. Now, for those that don't know, and most should, glaives were introduced back when Witch Queen came out. Now, glaives are, of course, the only first-person melee weapons in the game. We, of course, have class-specific glaives. We've got a heavy glaive now. We've got the glaives that came out when the season first came out. And before I get started on this topic, I kind of want to show that I know what I'm talking about, too. Go ahead and take a look at this. This is the Enigma. This is the first glaive we were able to craft when Witch Queen came out. Now, of course, later on, we gained the ability to add levels to our weapons just by buying them. But I want you to note a couple things here. One, my glaive is level 116. Now, my glaive was level 98 by the end of the first week of Witch Queen. So that gives you an idea of how many times that or how often I was using it. And to prove that I wasn't buying levels, take a look at the kill count on my glaive there. So yeah, almost 10,000 kills with it, so I definitely know what I'm talking about when it comes to using a glaive. So, I've used quite a few. I was collecting glaives at one point. Even when I was doing Vile Disciple, the first weapon I crafted was a glaive. I love the glaive. So, understand that when I'm saying all this, it's coming from a place of I love the glaive and I want it to be better. But there were a few points about the glaive that need to be improved if it's really going to be a good weapon. Right now, outside of a couple of very specific builds, it's not great. And it could be so much better. And the main things are going to revolve around its ammo type, how the shield works, and its melee type. And I'll get in what all those mean here just momentarily. But before we begin, I'll go ahead and show you guys what my build is, just so you kind of know. This is a melee build. It's kind of infinite invis build. And I've got on a hard shadow. If you don't have that, you can probably I would just go ahead and use a quick fang. Or any other void sword, but I mean, it's a hunter. Come on, you want to use a quick fang or something that can make invisible like hard shadow. This is essentially the Falcon's build I showed before, but using swords. So you see I got on Stylus Executioner, I got on Vanishing Step, Vortex Grenade, of course, Marksman's Dodge because we don't need to recharge our melee with this. Of course, Snare Bomb is by default. Triple Jump, if you're not using Triple Jump as a hunter, I don't know what you're doing with your life. And of course, using the Echo of Persistence, we're using Obscurity, Starvation, and Cessation. A couple of these can be swapped out, but the main things are Stylus Executioner and Vanishing Step. As far as mods go, this actually is a bit more adjusted to needing to get more heavy ammo solo and for melee builds. Of course, the helmet mods are going to change depending on if I'm in a group or solo, but we've got on the heavy ammo finder. It's very important to get heavy ammo with this build. Arm mods, just basic stuff, melee, and grenade focus orbs of power. The big things are elucent blades and melee damage resistance and harmonic reserves. You could take off a melee damage resistance, put on the harmonic reserves. That's really up to you. Void weapon surge along with absolution and recuperation. Reaper mod along with powerful attraction and proximity ward. So again, not a build video, but in case you are curious as to what build I'm using. Also, I guess go ahead and show off the glam, as it were. Show off the style. This is all Rivalry Black Sand as far as the shader. And you can see I've got on all the different what ornaments I got on. The Oculus Mask, the Thunderhead Grips, the Thunderhead Strides, and the White Wolf Cloak. So that is what I got on. So it does kind of bug me sometimes when people do videos and they got something awesome that they're wearing and I don't know what it is. There you go, in case you like what I'm wearing. Now, let's get into the issue with glaives. So the way glaives work there's three parts to glaives. They have a melee component. That's not a glaive. They have the melee component to it, which, you have infinite melee for. That's one of the big things about glaives is that it's a hybrid weapon. It is a melee weapon that can shoot projectiles. So you get infinite melees with it. Unlike a sword, which needs ammunition, which is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard of before, but it's Destiny 2, so we deal with it. So you need ammunition for swords. You do not need ammunition for the melees on glaives. That being said, the melees on glaives are much weaker. They're stronger than just a regular uncharged melee attack with your guardian, but they are not as strong as a sword attack. And of course, the projectile portion actually needs ammunition. And the shield part, it's changed here recently. Before, the only way you could get shield charge was actually, outside of perks, was to get hits with your projectile weapon, meaning that if you were out of ammo for it, you couldn't charge up your shield. Now, they recently changed that to actually increase your shield charge by 1% a second, which of course means it takes over 100 seconds to fully charge your shield with no ammo. And of course, I mean, 2 seconds in Destiny 2 in combat is forever, so 100 seconds, it's way too long to charge a shield, which is going to be kind of the first problem, is that the shields themselves take way too long to charge, and they don't block everything either. I can understand if they were 100% block power, why it would take so long to charge, but they're not, but I'm getting ahead of myself, so. I'm gonna get with, and I'm sorry, this is unedited, so it's kind of just my thoughts here, but, yeah, the first part about this is that the shield itself is not great. It's kind of all over the place how they wanted to build this weapon, but the shield itself either needs to block more damage, or it needs to not rely on getting shot or doing damage with, ranged weapons, or that extremely long countdown for the shield. If anything, the shield should work just like a sword shield. It should work on its own melee charge. You block for so long, then the shield goes down. I think that would be a much more reasonable way to charge up the shield. It can last as long as a sword melee. You can increase how long it lasts by holding it up, but it shouldn't be reliant on getting damage with the projectile or waiting that extremely long time to block things. Now, I also think that maybe the timer needs to be sped up as well. Again, a minute and 40 seconds is a very, very long time. And again, especially for something that does not block all damage, which will be the next thing, is that it either really needs to block all damage, or they definitely need to give us like infinite shield and just like partial damage blocking, like maybe 50% damage reduction and infinite shield or something along those lines. But the shield itself is not overly useful for how you... Like, there are uses for it, don't get me wrong. There are builds that do amazing with this, but there's not enough, and the glaives themselves do not lend themselves to a lot of builds. They did finally change the melee on it to actually interact with melee mods and some perks, but the next part of this is that it doesn't work with everything because the melee is an uncharged melee. It does not count as elemental damage, and that's the big one, is that the melee on here isn't elemental. And that's just kind of where it came into the build I was working on. I was testing to see, and this was a while ago, I know it doesn't work now, but I was testing to see at one point if the melee on this would continuously make me invisible as a hunter. It doesn't. You don't get elemental damage with the melee on here. Now, I've seen some people say, well, swords need, ammo to do their melee damage, but that's not a very good comparison because swords also do a ton of damage too. They're a heavy weapon. I think that Bungie's going to have to actually add on elemental damage to the melee for glaives to really make them worth it and to get them to actually work with a lot of builds too. I mean, right now, if they were to say add elemental damage to the glaive, I can make that work with Stylish Executioner. My glaive melees would have, volatile rounds on them, and those would proc Stylish Executioner. It'd be perfect. Some of the other glaives that are out there, I mean, you could have some glaives that had, say, I'm trying to think of what it is, incandescent on it and spreading scorch. That would be awesome. Unfortunately, that does not work now. Now, the projectiles have a element to them, but the projectiles, they're okay, don't get me wrong, but they're not really worth a special ammo brick, if that makes sense to you. And I'll get to that one here in a minute. The ammo is going to be the last part of this, but making these melees elemental, I think, would be a huge step towards making glaives more popular and more useful. Now, there'll be some pushback, the reason that elemental chart or the elemental damage doesn't work on them is because, it'd be too overpowered. I'd push back and say not so much. I mean, there's so much power creep in Destiny 2, and builds are so various, and this weapon is so underused that I would say even if you were to give this an elemental damage on this melee, it still wouldn't be used as much as I think people think it would be. In fact, I think it's still very weird that this doesn't have. I think the melee charge having an element to it is the bare minimum that this should have to begin with. Now again, that'll let it work with a lot more builds, it'll let it interact with a lot more subclasses a lot easier, as well as some other perks as well too. Like imagine the destabilizing rounds working on the melee. That'd be awesome. You run into a group of enemies, bam. You hit one, everything around becomes destabilized with just a minute. That'd be awesome instead of having to use a projectile. Now the projectile is the last part. Now the projectile is a somewhat strong projectile. It's somewhere around shotgun damage. I mean, it'll one-shot quite a few red bars. It's not going to take out like yellow bars and stuff in one shot. And that's even at level content. It's not going to be one-shotting much past red bars. So really, at that point, it's not really worth being a special ammo weapon either. And that's kind of the problem I'm having with this, is that it's not worth losing special ammo out on, or losing out on special ammo, because you're not doing that much damage. I mean, yeah, you can. There are some combinations of perks you can do to do damage with it while you've got your shield up still, but it's still a very niche build, and it's still not going to be useful for everything. So I think it is definitely very, I'd say it'd be definitely okay, not as OP as I think some people might be afraid of, to make this one, primary ammo. Let the magazines be small. You can see that this Eclipse, this staff right here only has 6 in the magazine. Let it have a small magazine capacity. That's fine. But it needs to run on primary ammo. It is definitely not worth, special ammo, especially as little special ammo as you can hold for this total. It's not worth it. The shield, again, shield either needs to recharge on its own much, much faster. I'm talking like within a few seconds, just like a sword melee does, or actually, that's just it. It needs to recharge separately from the projectile or the projectile damage. Also, again, like I said, that 1 minute and 40 seconds is way too long, so the shield's got to recharge a lot quicker. Now, whether or not they compensate that by lowering how much damage it blocks or not is going to be up to them. Personally, I'd say let it block the damage it's blocking now, but as long as it's got that small amount of charge time, it's going to make up for it. So actually, I think that quicker charge would balance this out a lot more. It's not going to be as powerful as you might think it would be. And now we're going to get to the issue, and again, of course, adding on the elements to the melee. The elements to the melee is a big one. That's a big bee in my bonnet, just because I can't make the melee work with my Enigma with my Falcons, so I definitely got to rely on my heavy ammo swords versus being able to have infinite melee on my Glaive. That's a big reason I really am upset with Glaives, but I've thought about this from every subclass too. Now, speaking of every class has also got its own exotic glaive, and these have gotten I think it's about like 2 or 3 buffs at this point. The only one that's really worth it right now is the Titan, and that's because it gives you basically a bunker shield that will increase your damage. It basically acts like Ward of Dawn. Now, here's the problem. I don't necessarily think that the types for each of these glaives fits the class that they were set up for. I understand they wanted to do like a one of each thing, so, one's got to be arc, one's got to be solar, and one's got to be void, but I think they stuck to that a little too hard, and they made weapons that don't really fit the subclasses too well. Let's go in for the Hunter first off. There we go. It's the Edge of Concurrence. Now, I've used this a bit. Its special ability is Lightning Seeker. Basically, you got to get a full shield charge, and then you hold reload, and you load a special electric round that, will do AoE damage to enemies. It'll track to them. That's not great. If you're using a melee weapon, something that takes that long to load up and to put, it doesn't work. It does do damage, don't get me wrong, but its special ability is shit. If I were to change this, assuming that we had the ability to, do melee damage with the element on it, I'd probably make this void specifically set to work with something like Joe Falcons. Or I'd set it up to where this gave me something like invisibility instead. Or any number of things, but invisibility is definitely the thing I'd probably go with for a glaive. You're using a melee weapon for Hunter, that first thing I think of is invisibility, something along those lines. So even if it wasn't necessarily a void weapon, even if it stayed arc, I would still say go ahead and give it invisibility anyway. Invisibility doesn't necessarily have to stick with the class it's on, or the subclass type it's on. Go ahead and give it invisibility because that is the Hunter trait. It's something Hunters do quite a bit. Or, again, make it a void class, or void type, and do all that as well. What else is next here? We got the Warlock one. I forgot what this one even does, because I've never seen anyone use it. When weapon energy is full, consume it before firing to make your next shot deploy. Oh yeah, the healing turret. This entire thing is made obsolete by Healing Rift. That's it. I can get my Healing Rift back before I can probably get this thing to go off. And it's a healing turret, so it's not like I can really direct it anyway. This is basically useless. It's a waste of a special ability. I've got 0 kills on this because it's not, like, I've seen people use it, it's useless. And I've seen very, very little of people using it, but when they have, the Healing Rift does so much better. So yeah, it's a healing weapon. I get it. They wanted to do something for the Warlocks. If I were to switch this, I'd say give us a turret instead. Give us an Arc Buddy, or give us a Solar Buddy. Now, I know we're getting Solar Buddies, Solar Souls in the upcoming, final shape, this could have been a perfect opportunity for them to go ahead and give us a Solar Buddy early. They give us Rocket Pistols early, give us a Solar Buddy early. Or again, switch the type and make it an Arc Buddy or a Void Buddy. Either way it goes, I mean, the healing one just doesn't really do it. They could have done so much better with this one. Now again, even if we did get those buddies, it would still be outclassed just by the fact that you could use your Rift and get it as well. But it would still do better than the restorative turret one. Now, the Titan one is one that I have used. It's a lot better. When it's full, you can consume the energy, hold hold reload, and shoot the ground, and a shield will come out. Now, it's not as big of a dome as your super is. It's a small dome. You can still fit a couple guardians in there, and it does give you water down when you're in there. It does give you a weapon boost. So, that is nice. That is somewhat useful. I can't really say that's a bad one. That is something that is very Titan-like. I can't really be mad about that one. If anything else, let's say maybe let you throw the glaive or something like that. It would be pretty Titan-wise, or, beat the hell out of an enemy with it, but you're already doing that because it's a melee weapon, so. The Titan one I can't complain about, but the one for Hunter and the one for Warlock are definitely not great, but. Yeah, I think those changes are what we really need for the Glaives because they are just not doing it. The Glaives they were very popular when they first came out, but, I mean, the only real glaive that I use would be the Winter Bite, and even that I barely use. Like you see, you get more freezes with this and you do enemy kills, but regardless, even with as good as the Winter Bite is, I don't use it very often. I do use it in my Warlock build just as a backup ice turret, but even then, half the time, I forget I even got the thing. I usually have my turret grenades back up too quick for that. So, yeah, those are the changes I would definitely make for the Glaives to make them better. I would swap up the class-specific Glaives. I would give them better abilities. I'd probably set it to where I can change the type or craft it to the type I want it to be. These are all craftable weapons. So you should let us actually craft them into the subclass type we want. I'm not saying let every weapon craft into whatever damage type we want, but let us do that with the Glaives. If I want to have a Void Glaive as a Hunter for my, exotic glaive, let me do that, because right now it's really not worth that exotic slot. And even then, none of that matters if we don't make the melee elemental base too. That's the big thing that's really got to change with these, is make it elemental base melee. Make the shields recharge on their own in a couple seconds very quickly, just like the sword shield, or the sword blocking, and make these run off of primary ammo. Now, I'm well aware of the fact that these are somewhat strong as far as up close and personal damage, but again, they're also up close and personal weapons. They're mid-range weapons. I can do more damage with my Ward of Crota than I typically can with my Glaive. Now again, there are very specific builds you can do with this. Like, I've seen people take Vexcalibur in through Grandmasters and just dominate the whole thing, okay? That is a very, very specific Hunter build though, and it's specifically for the Hunters, okay? I actually thought I might be able to do something crazy. I forgot what the exotic's called. It's the Hunter exotic for arms. Why did I not call the exotics here? Here we go. It's the new one that just came out. What's this thing called? There we go. The Triton Vice. I was hoping this thing might end up being somewhat like the Strongholds, but even this does not really help the Glaive at all. And for those who don't know what it does, it says, increases Glaive reload speed and melee damage when surrounded. Glaive melee final blows overflow around to the magazine. Glaive projectile final blows detonate if the Glaive deals damage matching your subclass type. Now, even that damage does not count as elemental. Or I think it might have, but it didn't. I'm sorry, I take it back. It counts as elemental, but it doesn't proc anything else. I actually tried to use this with my sword build. That detonation did not proc any of my stylish executioners. That disappointed me probably more than anything. I thought maybe I might have something using this. I might have a build for it. But unfortunately, the Triton Vice still does not work with the Stylish Executioner. So even those explosions, those energy explosions that do damage, still don't work. So, like I said, that's another one that's specific for this particular exotic. But that's one also, it needs to actually do damage that will actually proc that subclass, those subclasses, or the subclass damage types, like the Void, doing volatile rounds, or, the Arc type doing, blinding or something like that. The Stellar type, spreading incineration or spreading Scorch. Stuff like that would have been perfect for this, but it doesn't do that. It's just it might as well be Firefly. Matter of fact, that's what it is. It's basically Dragonfly, but for Glaive, which is not great. So, yeah, those are the fixes I would probably add to the Glaive. Any one of them would improve the Glaive immensely, I mean, even if we just made the sub, or made the sub, I keep wanting to say sub-munitions. And if we just made the munitions type, primary weapon or primary ammo, that would be a huge boon to it. If we just changed the shield recharge, it'd be awesome. Or if we just made the melee elemental, I think that would, any one of those would make the glaive at least usable. If you were to put 2 or 3 of those together, I think the glaive would become that weapon they wanted it, Bungie wanted it to be when Witch Queen came out. And the glaive was used quite a bit when Witch Queen came out, don't get me wrong. It's still used in PvP by some mad lads. And again, there are still some very, very specific builds that use it and can do it well, but those are few and far between. So, yeah, those are just my random thoughts on the glaive. Hopefully we get a real fix. Specifically, I'm hoping that they make that elemental damage one a thing, because I think that would really help out the build I want to do. Again, that was kind of selfish on my part, because I want to have I want that to fit with my Falcons build, but that's just me. But yeah, that'll do it for today, guys. Thank you for coming by. That was my rant about Glaives, and yeah, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. What you guys think about Glaives too. I will see you guys later.